So the day of the execution has arrived, and it's now been officially revealed that the church, and specifically Orwell, this archbishop, is evil. And I think there's going to be a large portion who will be like, oh, I saw that coming. But there's also portions of the internet that I continue to have conversations with over the weeks that, we're hoping for something a bit different. I gotta be honest, because this show has really broke away from the typical story arcs and hooks that the isekai genre has kind of set out. And I don't think this episode ruins the show or anything, but I can't help but feel a tad disappointed that it was simply like Orwell was an evil woman who was summoning these people or allowing royalty to summon them so that they could experiment and use their abilities, hopefully to prolong her own life. And she got lucky when someone like, Menno and then Akari came into the picture, and the fact that you can, for 10 years, raise her up to be a good catalyst, vessel to use, and then you got lucky with Akari with her ability to revert time. But there was just felt to me like, while the church as a whole is always the likely suspect for evil, whether it's stories or honestly even in reality half the time, I just was kind of expecting like they were painting such a clearly evil old character trope to break it apart. Like, I was expecting either within this episode or the next couple of episodes, she would get killed because she turned out to be a good person and the true villain would pop up sort of a thing. So to just kind of have it be the typical like, oh, this girl who lost everything was raised by someone who probably did care for her. Like Flair probably was a legit good person who was manipulated. Whether she knew the full truth remains to be seen. But I think the idea that it's simply just she was betrayed, like, that's the most, I think, typical and tropey thing that this show has laid out in terms of main story hooks and stuff. But just because something's typical doesn't make it bad. It's all about the execution here on out. And I think there is a lot of good building blocks that they can use to make it into something that still remains to be something that will leave episode 12 feeling satisfied with. I do have to be honest with my feelings and say, yeah, I am disappointed that maybe they didn't twist the evil church route more, but ultimately that's just criticism. It's not hate, even though the internet doesn't know the difference between that. You say anything negative about something someone likes or anything, and, you're apparently the biggest hater. I think I've been pretty damn positive on this show for 4 weeks to 5 weeks now, so for me it is disappointing, but it's something that I need to say, otherwise I'd just be a liar on video, right? But the thing that does help give it hope, in my opinion, is the fact that, for one, we have the princess, who seemingly is actually going to be working with Momo. Most likely will then group up. It'll be Momo, the princess, Akari, and Menno. And it'll be interesting to see because most likely the archbishop won't end up dead or anything. And even if so, there will be someone else who will be hunting them. So it'll be interesting to see if they go into more of like breaking apart the hierarchy, because seemingly from what we know in this episode, the idea of summoning people to just end up getting killed ultimately was given to them by the church. So they were allowing that in order for them to look away from their own crimes as she tries to find a way to prolong her life. And I actually do like the idea that it was an accidental, happy kind of coincidence that someone like Akari popped up. It was simply like them draining young girls' blood in some weird, almost blood magic rituals. And the fact that someone with the ability to control time just so happened to pop up. And obviously, at the same time, you have someone like Menno, who's been a very strong vessel and a warrior for so long. It actually just all works out for them at this point. I also still suspect that even though there is the lies about why these characters need to be killed because they're a danger, I do think there is still going to be a danger. I don't think that part's going to be like completely bullshit, like it was the church just selling a lie so that killing them would seem okay. I do think someone with Akari's ability, the ability to reverse time not only for yourself but others, I do think there's going to be a penalty someday, whether that hurts her, hurts others, or just shows you that, like, that in the past anyway, when Menno's entire village was destroyed. I wouldn't be shocked if even that was a legit point in time where, before the idea of wanting to prolong your life, there was some legit fears of what was going on, and then it ended up into the kind of corruption that we saw. So for me, it's kind of like a mixed bag episode. Something that I enjoyed watching from start to end, but it's just one of those things that I was hoping it wouldn't go in the typical church plot line, but, I'm always open to the possibility of the typical becoming the untypical, right? So it's just a matter of how long it takes to get to certain points and where they want to go from here. Because if any of the past episodes were anything to go off of, this show really has twisted your typical impressions of things and how it operates. So it's just a matter of the execution going on from here on out, right? But I did like the fact that before jumping into the execution, they further fleshed out the humanity in Akari and how that was definitely influencing Menno. Even though she wasn't fully admitting out loud that she didn't want this girl to die, you could tell there was some guilt there. That unlike previous kills where she could just immediately kill someone and not feel any remorse because she believed in her programming that she was doing the right thing, this is an innocent girl who does she really need to be killed? But then of course you're looking at your own past, the shit that would happen to your village and stuff. But I love the fact that they do similar things that, she was doing for Momo. The fact that back in Momo's past, right, she had the hair bands, right, and how she ties up her hair. And the fact that, she was going to get her a present, and then of course Akari gets all jealous, and then she ends up getting her something for her headband, right? It just very much, she has a similar vibe going on with Momo, even ignoring the kind of like Yuri undertones and everything, right? But the fact that, she was clearly not completely putting on an act, I think for the most part, before the betrayal reveal, she was mostly committed to killing her, but I think it was more like a 60-40 split of like 40% of her wishing she didn't have to, and 60% just going with her general commands, right, of killing the people who will cause us threats someday. The thing that actually kind of impressed me was the continuation of exploring the magic and also the just general perspective. Like when Momo was going in that tunnel to explore, right, and the fact that they had it so twisting and turning, it was a really cool visual design, and I thought we were going to build up into a fight, but I like the idea of turning something that could have just been a typical rivalry into something that seemingly is an unlikely team-up, which I think will be pretty amazing. I like the fact that they can use their scriptures for like cameras and stuff, just typical things in our own world, but used in a magical way, which is pretty fantastic. I mean, this episode, I imagine, will probably have a mixture of people saying, I told you so, / I called it, and I think a decent amount of people saying, maybe I wish it wasn't as typical as just a church doing something for selfish gains. But ultimately, it just matters of where they go from here. And I think because this didn't just happen at episode 2, this is episode 5, right? The fact that we had 4 episodes that I thought were quality, that laid out a pretty interesting world, a different take on, even knowing there is that typical evil church plotline, still a lot of what the church was doing is not so typical in the past episodes. So I think there's still enough to turn this into something that will remain to be memorable and not just like here's your generic copy and paste isekai of the season. I think, with the idea of the Yuri romance and the will they won't they, you have the interesting magical, mechanical, kind of like how the world operates and the scriptures and things like that. And I think the idea of almost turning it into more of a revenge story / where someone like Akari will go, because I know a lot of people think that she does remember the attempt at her life and the previous time. So if that's the case, it'll be interesting to see, was she putting on an act, or was she just hoping maybe she'd see the error in her ways? Because based on what we were seeing, even though she kind of had like this suspicion, I feel like she was ready to sit on that chair and whatever happened. And maybe it wasn't until like she actually was being attempted to be kind of slaughtered like a cattle that she would have reversed it and stuff. But still, good stuff. It may not have been exactly what I was hoping for, but it's not enough to ruin the series either for me, so hopefully people don't take my criticism as hate, because I still really like this show, and I'm going to be covering it all the way to the end. But thoughts if you have any, whether you're a fan of the source material, or if you're anime original like myself, what did you think of this episode, and what do you hope to see going forward now that, something that's typically seen as typical has been revealed, but has so many other not so typical things backing us? Let me know your thoughts down below. Leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new around here. Until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.